I would entertain a motion for the minutes of the last meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from the last meeting. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Going on to Harmony Sports Complex letter. Somebody want to speak to that?
Yes,
Sure.
Good morning, Council. I'm at Kami. I'll go over a little quick, and then also we have staff here if you have additional questions about letters. So thanks for reviewing the letter, and we incorporated some of the comments you had there. Before that, I want to give you an update. We did have a meeting with the City of Vancouver yesterday, but also with the Sport Harmony Complex staff were there on site about the efforts on some of the improvement and also the discussion on 13th Street. So mainly the conversation focused on getting the plan moving forward for the parking, the new parking and the parking improvement, because that's part of the commerce grant that we have, and also some money from the county, some of the money that they have raised to make sure that moves forward. So that was a good discussion. So at least we have a blueprint of what the next steps are on that one. They will continue to have a discussion on 13th Street that was not resolved. So the city mentioned that they like to get the county involved, also some other properties involved about the further discussion on 13th Street. So at this point, we have the letter ready and for council directions to on our county's perspective on the 13th Street for the project. So if you have any comments or questions on the letter, or if it's ready to send, please let us know.
Okay, I would take comments from the council. Ahmad, you said that you met with the city, and I think I believe that when we talked about this letter prior to this, that you wanted to have had that meeting and would kind of determine at that point, should we send the letter? And I'm assuming that you are recommending that we send the letter at this time?
Yeah, since there was no final decision made on the 13th Street by the city, so I think since they're collecting input and comments, so probably this would be a good starting point for the council to send a letter, and then they're going to be doing engagement from the city is going to do engagement with us and the other property owners and see if there are other options or if the 13th Street is going to go through, but that's still going to be part of discussion in the future.
Okay, are there comments of the council? You want to go ahead and send the letter?
I would be supportive of that.
Me too.
Yeah, so my only question and comment, I think the original letter had everyone's signature on it. I am absolutely fine having the manager and the chair signature on it only, but I support the letter. Thanks for the changes that you made. And I think it is a timely time to express the council's views on this.
Okay, I guess let's go ahead and send the letter then.
And just one more thing I wanted to add, the first point that you see in this letter, I did mention to the Harmony Sport Complex that they do need to bring it back to council for a final approval before that's submitted to city, so everybody's aware of it. But I think for the purpose of this letter, that makes sense that this is the ultimate plan, what they have and what our reasons for objecting 13th Street. It supports that document. So, but there will be one more step on getting that finalized. But I think with this letter, it should be okay.
You're saying it's okay that we don't
No,
move
it's okay to send a letter with this because we did
with this plan.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay.
Does that, okay, so we'll go ahead and you go ahead and send that then. Is that correct? You don't need us to move on this plan, right?
No, not
Okay,
right now.
all right, all right. Okay, thank you. All right, so we will move on then to new business. The Clark County Sheriff's Office shooting range.
Thank you, Council. I'll go ahead and start it, and then we have our team, our staff, and also our Sheriff's Department staffs are here. So next, there's a few things that we're going to go over and the reasons and for what we're trying to do and moving the sheriff's shooting range, all of it to the Camp Bonneville. So justification on that one is the current location at English Pit is becoming more of safety issues, and also as the development and residential activity is getting near to that area, and it's also very small, and there's some other needs that our sheriff's department have that the site doesn't provide. So Camp Bonneville is an ideal facility since the law enforcement and everything is allowed as part of that 9-step agreement. And we have already an existing facility, the FBI range, that our sheriff's department can use that, and with some minor improvements to accommodate their needs. So the English Pit move to timeline that we have right now, we'd like to get that accomplished by end of this year. So come January 1st, our sheriff's department have a facility to go to. And also, as you know, the English Pit also provides a training area for a lot of other jurisdictions. So in terms of scheduling and things like that, it makes sense. So some of the improvements that we want to do for FBI range, that includes 10 new shooting range lanes right now. It's existing. There are 50 meters and also 100 meters rifle. There's an existing 30-meter pistol range that we want to restore that, so that allows if we need overflows or anything like that, but what's an existing shooting range that we want to improve that. And then some of the cabin improvements that are there for the classroom and things like that. It's existing, so just do some cleanup, some painting, just some of the minor improvement now to get that accommodated. The other one was the FBI lease options. We do have a lease with the FBI. It's about $100 per year, and that's for next 2 years. So we're going to continue to have the discussion, and they like to see if we extend it or renewed. So we're going to continue to have that discussion with them. Right now, we're planning to do the range management as part of our Parks Department activity for scheduling and everything, since that's within our park, within our purview, and our staff will be doing that scheduling. And some of the cost recovery from that, some of the fees that we're going to be collecting for anybody who uses that facility, so that we can make sure that the cost recovery is there for management of that. And then once we have your approval, we'll do a public notice that to let everybody know that the move that's going to happen by January. One thing is nice that our next door neighbor is the Clark Rifle. They have extended, one of their range officers has extended a volunteer to help us on some of the improvements that they have done for their rifle facility, and in terms of sound buffering and other stuff that he's gonna help us and provide some consulting and volunteer hours, so that we'll utilize that in terms of any improvements we need to do to make sure that it's done properly. So we'd like to get your input because there'll be some expenditure, some amendment we need to do for cost in order to do some minor improvement, and we'd like to get your guidance on that. For right now, I'd like to turn it over to Casey from our Sheriff's Department, that he's going to provide some details on the history of the English Bit, and also the requirements and the needs for making sure that we do have a facility for them to get trained, and for the public safety and the benefits that we have from that. So with that, Casey.
All right, I forgot to click the mute button. Unclick it. I'm Commander Casey Casper, Sheriff's Office. Currently, I'm the Special Operations Commander, so I manage our SWAT team, our K9, and several of the other high liability units. And the end of the year, my job will change, and I will be becoming the commander over our training unit, as well as some other responsibilities. Currently, I'm actually at Camp Raialea down at the Oregon coast with 33 members of our regional SWAT team, which is the Sheriff's Office, Vancouver Police Department, Camas Police Department. We have a member from Battleground Police Department as well. And I bring that up just because there are a significant number of training needs that we have as law enforcement, as well as our regional partners, just to maintain our basic level of capabilities. So some of that will come into play here in just a little bit. If you could go to the next slide, please, we'll talk about. So currently, this is a kind of a wide range view of English Pit. I don't know the year that we actually moved in there, but I believe it was in the late 80s. I know when I started in 1997, it was well established. As you all know, the sheriff's office is a tenant everywhere we occupy space, and English Pit is really no difference. The only true difference between this one is we were entirely responsible for its use, its management, how it's paid for. You see the next bullet point is partnerships. Not only do we use this range between our enforcement branch, our corrections branch, our regional SWAT team, the days that we are not using it for our own needs, it's being leased out to I believe it's 20 some agencies in the area, which includes Gresham, Multnomah County, Washington County occasionally, and a number of federal agencies come in and lease that range, to the extent that we've even put sheds out there so that they can lease those in order to recover some costs and keep some of their equipment out of there. So this range is literally used every day of the week. It is absolutely full. Well, prior to the COVID issue, it kind of sat empty for a little bit, but for the most part, other than maintenance days, it's used every single day of the week. And we would, when this one was booked, we would use the FBI range. So I think that kind of gives a broad overview of the needs. We take advantage of every other possible training location we can, which is why I mentioned Camp Raialea down here at the Oregon coast. Just for our SWAT team, NTOA is the governing body, if you will, or the industry standard for SWAT teams across the U.S., and they have standard operating procedures, best practices that say if you're going to be a SWAT team of a particular level, you will have 8 to 24 hours of training per month, and then 1 40-hour week per year. So that's what we're doing right now, is our 1 40-hour week per year. And that's separate from just the responsibilities that the sheriff's office has to train our patrol deputies and our detectives. So we have policies written that tell us what our training standards are. We participate in an accreditation program where we have to provide proof and documentation of our training records every year, and then they are inspected by, it's called CALIA, but I can't remember what the acronym stands for. But bottom line is we're checked up on annually and in 3-year increments for what it is that we're doing across our policy board. One of those policies is that we have to shoot at night, and we have to qualify annually at night. And then the needs of the regional SWAT team that we're part of are even higher than that. As you can imagine, locations to train are extremely limited. We do have really good relationships with not only the county, but local developers, and where we're able to get houses and other locations that we can train in. Schools have been really helpful, especially Vancouver schools. Now that they're replacing a number of them, we've been able to use those. But again, locations to train are extremely limited. And then to go a little bit further in it, recently Initiative 940 passed, which was followed up by House Bill 1064, which on its surface is a police use of force law, but buried within that, and then with the requirements set forth by the State Training Commission, our hours have increased significantly, and they've become more and more specific. So this location here, besides all of the neighborhood issues and the complaints of the groundwater and lead and it's just too small. It does not fit our needs any longer. And then we were notified early last year that the county intends to close that. And as a good tenant, we have to comply because we don't want them to have to force us out, because we're the ones that have to force people out if they get evicted. So the move is supposed to take place by the end of this year. Go ahead to the next slide. So there's a current user agreement between the county and the FBI, and the sheriff's office is kind of a awkward third party with that. And what I mean is the county has the agreement, which really falls under parks as their responsibility. Somehow we were tasked with holding on to the funds that FBI has given the county in exchange for their user agreement. The FBI wants to negotiate a new one. We haven't started those negotiations yet, although the FBI has made some proposals, and they have some very strict requirements in their user agreements that I don't know. We have to look and see whether those are really in the best interest of the county, because as the current agreement stands, they had up to a 10-year lease, which expires in April of 22. Besides what Ahmad had spoke about with the yearly rate, they had said, okay, we want this use of this facility for 10 years, and we are going to give the county $150,000 for maintenance and roads and expansions and et cetera. So that's where you'll see down here on the second line up from the bottom, there's about $34,000 left in that particular fund that can be used for any repairs or refurbishment at the FBI range. I'm going to try and check my notes here to see if there's anything else that I really wanted to bring up. I told you that it expires in 2 years. As tenants of the current English Pit range, we were able to lease out range days and rent out sheds, like I had told you guys about, to end up funding that facility. And once that facility closes, we won't have that revenue anymore. CCSO is more than willing to help parks with the business plan to continue that if they wish. Both the FBI and CCSO has a significant interest in this, and that's one of the things that they're going to ask for guidance on is how that relationship should look in the future. Again, we are more than willing to help parks with the business plan on what has worked for us, and what they choose to continue with is going to be up to them. Obviously, things like that are expensive to run. The other thing I wanted to touch on as far as use of the range is, I'd mentioned earlier, we have to do nighttime qualifications. Those are not only policy requirements, but they're also industry best practice standards. We train and qualify with rifles. Every deputy is issued a rifle, and currently at English Pit, there's only 4 lanes at 50 yards, and that is what the request to refurbish the FBI range into a 100-yard range is so that we have that ability to train, qualify, and maintain our standards for our rifle qualifications. And again, that also, we have to qualify at night for our handguns as well as our rifles. Typically that's done in winter months where it's dark at 5. And we had discussed with Ahmad, the law enforcement has no issue completing training by 9 p.m. We can usually get everything that we need to have done by then, at least the things that would make noise, or doing that during the winter months. But it definitely would be a common occurrence that we would be out there until late if we were granted permission to use that. I think the last thing that I really wanted to mention is that Camp Bonneville provides a ton of opportunities for not only our SWAT team, but our patrol deputies to train in a safe location. We're familiar with all of the regulations and the issues surrounding the unexploded ordnance, and we don't go into that area. Couple of examples of recent calls that we've had where training at Camp Bonneville has prepared for us. If you guys will remember, 2 years ago, Deputy DeRozier in Cowlitz County was shot and killed on a suspicious vehicle stop. That was in a very wooded and steep terrain location off of the Kalama River Road east of I-5. And we were called at about 2 a.m. to go up and relieve the Cowlitz County SWAT team who had just started working that particular problem because the suspect was outstanding. We were up there for over 20 hours and our team was in the woods most of that time. And it was directly related to training that we had done out at Camp Bonneville that we were able to communicate, move, navigate, and have our staff feel comfortable operating in that dark environment in thick woods. So, and then our canine teams typically train out there as well. And, you know, most of the county is still pretty rural, and it's not unusual for us to have long dog tracks that go into heavily wooded areas or cross gravel roads or cross the streams and creeks. So, you know, we would very much appreciate the opportunity to have that as a law enforcement training area, because it does provide so many good opportunities for us to practice the skills that we need out in the field. And then not only that, just some of the buildings out there are very good for us to use. Meeting spaces are becoming harder and harder to find, especially ones that you can spread out in and maintain some distances. So there is some requests that are going to be coming for the possibility of upgrading some of the buildings at Camp Bonneville to make them available for not just us and not just training, but also other county meetings and other needs. And with that, I think I've about covered it all. So I'll stay on for any questions if anybody has anything. But with that, I think, Ahmad, we can move on to our next presenter.
Well, Counsel, if I may, this is Bill Richardson with the prosecution office. There is one issue that I don't think was addressed that is, I believe, a very important issue, specifically for CCSO, in that the Clark County Sheriff's Office manages the schedule of different entities out at English Pit. Currently under the FBI user agreement out at Camp Bonneville, the FBI has control of that schedule. If the Clark County Sheriff's Office is moving off of English over to Camp Bonneville, there's going to be a need to have at least some, if not total, control of the scheduling of the facilities out there at Camp Bonneville to ensure that not only the Sheriff's Office, but the regional SWAT team, the FBI, and any other entity, law enforcement entity that needs to use that facility is able to work with a central hub point, be it parks and or the Clark County Sheriff's Office, to ensure that scheduling is done appropriately. So that's another big issue that's going to come into play in the transfer of the Sheriff's Office out to English Pitt. I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but I remember that being a fairly significant issue that probably the council should have in mind.
Bill, is that something that, does the lease with the FBI address that, or would it prohibit that?
So the user agreement currently is, I'm sorry, I don't mean to correct you, Chair. It's not a lease, it's a user agreement. But, and I guess it's 6 in one and half dozen in the other. Yes, it does address the scheduling of the facilities out at Camp Bonneville, the firing range out at Camp Bonneville. There has, I won't say there's been abuse of the scheduling, but there has been unavailability that was probably not justified under the current provisions of the user agreement. And we're going to need to create a better mechanism for managing that schedule, either in cooperation with the FBI or wholly taking over the scheduling, so that not only the FBI but all other entities have the ability to use it. And that is part of the renegotiation of a user agreement with the FBI. There's a lot of legal issues that come into play with how we're going to handle the current user agreement and transfer it over into a new user agreement. That all is the cart that goes behind the horse of getting CCSO over to Camp Bonneville before English Pitt closes down. Did that answer your question, Chair?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay.
Are there, did you want to move on, Ahmad, or shall we actually entertain questions for Casey at this point? The council has any.
I think there's a couple more slides that has more information that will help the discussion points. I think I'll turn it over to Greg Johnson. I know some of them are repeated from a workshop we had at Camp Bonneville, but I think for this purpose, we'd like to repeat that if that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Greg, go ahead.
Okay, the slide right here right now is the location of Camp Bonneville within the county. It's the southeast corner, 4,000 acres. Most of you have been out here. If you haven't been out here, get a hold of me and I'll be more than happy to give you a tour. Okay, so the next slide, please. Okay, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but this again is the language from the faucet, which states the uses allowed under the reuse. Once again, because of all the interest we've had from the public about this, I just want to reiterate that a law enforcement training center and the FBI range have always been part of this, and hopefully will be for the future. Next slide, please. Okay, Kevin covered the forest management very well. I just want to reiterate that the 950 acres of the property has been cut, brush cut, and cleared for munitions, which is a significant part of the property, and that definitely reduced the fuel load out here. And additionally to the Department of Natural Resources, this is our second year in a partnership with them for the helicopter attack teams, and that's going very well. The last part of August and September, where the fires were really bad, they were deploying daily. Jones Creek, Lacamas Lake, they were everywhere, and they've reduced their response time from Olympia was about 1 hour and 15 minutes, and now we cut that down to about 15 minutes. They're here, they're ready to go at any time when we have a fire. Next slide, please. Okay, Commander Casper had talked about some of the range improvements, and Ahmad had also. This is a picture of the current FBI range. On the right-hand side, the drawing, the blue is the safety burn. The current 50-meter range is the light green, and then the buildings are behind those in the road. The part where we want to do the extension is to the longer dark green part. It'll bring it out to 100 meters and add 10 additional lanes. The picture on the left, that is what it looks like currently. It's basically a good solid gravel base. There's some piles of timber in the back. So we need to, basically what we need to do is move dirt and extend the berm in the back and then put one on the right-hand side. There's no utilities there. There's no water. There's no power. So it's fairly simple. It's just about moving dirt from that point. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the former commanding officers' quarters at Camp Bonneville. Probably a lot of you have probably been by it. I don't know if you've been in it, but on the right-hand side, that's a picture of the interior. It's in very good shape structurally. Some of the problems we're having is just the weathering on the outside and some of the structural beams on the deck. So we wanted to make all those repairs. The floors need to be sanded and restained, and the heating and it has the electric baseboards in it, which are real hard to control the temperature. So we wanted to put in a ductless mini split system so it'll have heating and cooling when people are in there. And then we wanted to add some furniture, conference tables, some audio video, and some internet upgrades. And this will be not only for the sheriffs and the FBI to use, but also we would like to rent it out basically to other county departments and things like that for conferences and things like that. That's the vision for right now. Next slide, please. This slide here is a picture of the former 30 millimeter pistol range that was out here. It's in very good condition. It has a lot of vegetation growth because it hasn't been used in a while. We plan to do is grade it, plant some fescue grass that doesn't grow very fast, and then put a covered shooting area on the back of it, and some gravel for the road going in, and compact the gravel, and it'll be up and running in no time. Next slide, please. Okay, I had already spoken about the DNR presence that's been out here for the summers. The cleanup of the cleanup is basically complete. We still have a few contractors just finishing up the odds and ends. We're working with the ecology on the closeout, and also I've spoken with ecology about these improvements that we're talking about, and they're okay with it. And Bill had talked briefly about the management. Some of our ideas are for Parks Department to manage the range schedule and things like that, but that's still things we're working on. And next slide, please. Oh, I'll turn it over to Ahmad. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. So these are just our schedule in terms of completing and making sure that our Sheriff's Office Department have a place to go by January. So we're going to continue to work with FBI and develop interlocal or memorandum of understanding in terms of addressing the move and management logistics with Sheriff's Department. But one of our primary goals is to make sure they have a place to go that's safe, and they have a place where they can do all the training that they have from policy, but make sure that we have the best trained officers that are out there. And then and then we'll bring back to you on your thoughts on agreement and potential rates. We'd like to discuss that because we want to make sure that the rates come back to park so we can help to manage that. And the reason we want the parks to manage that is because we have staff there all the time and during the business hours, so that way that better service and somebody watches and plan and provide safety for the area. And then we need to get everything moved out of the English pit by December or by end of December. So that concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have from the presentation from our Sheriff's Department and also our Parks Departments on how we're going to be managing that site.
Are there questions of the council?
Madam Chair, I have.
Councilor Matt, did you?
So thank you. And I want to go back to the sheriff's presentation and then when Bill Richardson spoke up. So there are two issues there. One, I was going to address who's in charge and by asking it in a different way, because it sounds like the sheriff has been running the show at English Pit. And I'm wondering why they wouldn't do so at Camp Bonneville as well. Do they not have the capability? I understand the issue with the user agreement that needs to be perhaps amended, but I'm confident that could be done. But more importantly, just going back to what was described earlier, is this an area where we need a more refined and specific legal opinion? Because this isn't recreation, this isn't conservation, this is a training facility. Do we, I want to avoid lawsuits. I want to make sure we're on absolute solid ground before we invest in the movement of a training facility. The other comment and question goes to, I'm familiar with the camp. I used to do Soldier of the Year competitions out there at Capralia. And obviously you probably waste a day of full-time work out of each deputy, just movement back and forth from our county out to the coast. But I'm also wondering if there are cost savings that we would also save by having our own training facility at Camp Bonneville. So those are some of the questions I have. And I guess first and foremost is, can we legally build a training facility there for us and other agencies?
Yeah, those are some very good points. As far as the legal question, I'll give my thoughts on that, which is it's listed in that one particular paragraph of the consent agreement, I believe, that that is one of the intents initially, and it's part of the initial master plan of Camp Bonneville is to have a law enforcement training center. So yeah, that section 8 right there. So I'll let Bill speak to that completely. As far as cost savings, yeah, you're right. It takes a half a day to get here and a half a day to get home. So of our 40 hours, we have to make that up in the meantime, having longer days out here. This trip costs a significant amount of money to come down here. It's not directly billed to the county, but it is funds that are charged to the county through our participation in the interlocal SWAT agreement. So part of the I think we pay right around $100,000 a year into that particular program. But the facility here costs us in the neighborhood of $6,000 for a week. And that doesn't include paying the caterer to feed our folks down here. When we travel, we fall under City of Vancouver policy. So every employee that comes down here has to be paid the typical GSA per diem through VPD. And again, that comes out of the SWAT budget, which is planned for, but it's indirectly billed to the county through that. Having a local place that we can do most of these activities is incredibly important. And I think if you look at the big picture is if not Camp Bonneville, then where? And there just isn't another place that we can do these kinds of things for this amount of money. It would cost a significant amount just to build a brand new range somewhere would be in the neighborhood of $2 million. And all we're looking at is trying to clean up some existing facilities. Bill, did you want to jump in and say anything?
So echoing what Casey said, under the site reuse plan, the intended reuse includes law enforcement training center and an FBI firing range. But to add to that a little bit, this is not a new use of a firing range. Specifically, it's not a new use of an abandoned firing range. This FBI range has been in use for decades, to include before the whole reuse plan came into effect. There's been no complaints at all about the use of the firing range. And by complaints, I don't mean from citizens that live within close proximity to Camp Bonneville. I'm talking about from Department of Ecology, from Department of Defense, from the Army. There's been no complaints about the use of this range facility, and I think it's specifically because it is contemplated in the reuse. So to answer your question, Councilor Medvedev, I'm not sure what is meant by the build out of a law enforcement facility above and beyond what is already there. If we're talking about the expansion of the currently used firing range to include a 100-meter set of firing lanes, and the opening of the 30-meter pistol range, which is in close proximity to the other range, it does not appear to be contrary to the legal documents that currently control Clark County's use and possession of Camp Bonneville. But again, we could do additional legal research if it's necessary. But before we did that, I would really want to find out, other than a citizen that's within close proximity to Camp Bonneville, are there any governing agencies or partners that are raising the question as to whether or not this facility is appropriate on Camp Bonneville? And I'm not aware that they have. I would love to know, has the council received complaints from any governing agency saying that they don't believe that this is a proper use of at least a portion of Camp Bonneville?
No.
Okay. So I don't know what, again, I would need a vote of the council and a narrowing of the question as to what you're seeking a legal opinion on, because I can't respond to a citizen complaint. I can respond to the council's request for a legal opinion, and I will, but I need to know exactly what the question is, and it would be helpful to know who, other than residents in close proximity to this facility, are complaining about the use of the firing range. That will help us trace down the bases for these complaints.
So I wasn't talking in the context of any citizen complaints whatsoever, and I certainly have not received any agency or governmental question of any kind from any source. I think you just answered the question that I was raising. I just wanted to have public discussion and basically transparency on what you believe the legal position to be. So I have no further questions at this point.
Okay, I did want to clarify.
Counselor,
There was a question about parks taking over the scheduling as opposed to the sheriff's office, and I would like to hear the answer to that or input regarding that.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to bring up. From our perspective, we are just trying to be good partners to have a place to train. We didn't initiate the closing of English Pit, and we've used Camp Bonneville as an overflow training center, and it's been a great place to be. Going from 2 available ranges to 1 is going to be a a squeeze. We have a lot of needs, and somebody's going to have to be told no, they can't use our facilities at some point because of taking care of our agencies first. You know, I'm not going to speak to my opinion on whether we should or shouldn't include the FBI in this, but I do think that having some of this scheduling, as far as getting the sheriff's office needs taken care of first, which Ahmad has made clear that's his goal. We can schedule our days. We will have access to that calendar. That's already built. What we are willing to help parks with is that cost recovery, because like I said earlier, I think our operational budget for the range is in the neighborhood of $30,000 a year. And that money comes from leasing the range and leasing those sheds out to other agencies. One of the things that expanding or recommissioning that 30-meter pistol range is that allows more than one agency to be in that location at the same time, and it will help with that cost recovery. So as far as whether we're willing to take over the schedule and management or not, we can do whatever it is that we need to do, but I think it's better that we work alongside parks with that, just because it's their facility.
Okay, so Ahmad or Galena, did you say that somebody is going to be stationed there on a daily basis? Somebody from Parks will be there?
So we have,
Yeah, I think-
Ahmad, go ahead.
Sorry, Galena. Chair, our goal was to make sure we provide service to the Sheriff's Department. I think make sure their needs are met. And I've been very open with Casey and our Sheriff's Department about that. Just like we provide services for fleet and other stuff we do. So we want to be a service provider and not having to burden them with other logistics or things like that. Since we're going to have staff there all the time at Camp Bonneville in terms of safety and who comes in, who goes out, it's really important for us to manage the scheduling and other logistics and maintenance of the range. So from that, because it's part of the activity of the park and holistically, I think that I want to make sure there's a clear line on that one. And then at English Pit, it made sense because it was a very simple area and our sheriffs did that, but this is part of the entire property. So in terms of logistics and safety, I think it makes sense for our Parks Department to manage that. And also the revenue that gets collected that goes back in and within Parks Department, so to manage and clean up and maintenance, things like that. So from those logistics parts, I think we should have Parks Department manage that.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that clarification. Are there other questions of the council?
Yes, Chair.
Councilor Lentz.
How is cleanup handled at English Pit now, and how would it be handled for this range if the county, and how does the FBI handle it? But what's the cleanup expectation and plan for this?
So I think, let me understand that question. In terms of cleanup for lead removal and things like that, or is that what you're referring, Councilor?
Yes.
Okay. So for the English Pit, once we have our Sheriff's Department moved out of there, we are going to do the clean up the site and then evaluate if we need to surplus the property or something else, because it is the property is owned by Public Works Department. So we're going to clean up the site. That will be part of the normal transaction before we do anything with that area. And then on the routine cleanup of the lead removal, that's part of the regular maintenance of the shooting range that our Parks Department will be doing that on a routine basis. And I'm not sure if that was the last time that there was a cleanup effort when the FBI was using that, maybe KC knows, but that's part of our, another reason we wanted to manage that or have Parks Department manage the facility so those routine things are happening on a regular basis.
Yeah, I'll say two things to that. English Pit, the CCSO range was cleaned of lead. I don't remember the exact date, but probably within the last 5 to 8 years. There was a company that comes in and they basically mine out the hillside and separate the lead from the dirt. They haul away any of the contaminated dirt, and then they bring in new material for the berm. So that can be done again, only on a little bit bigger scale for the closure of English Pit. The same process can be done at Camp Bonneville. We had this discussion not too long ago. We're not aware of the last time it was done at the range at Camp Bonneville. But there's also a portion of the lease agreement or the user agreement with the FBI that addresses that as well. So that's something that I think probably Bill and Greg would have to look into to confirm it. But I do recall talking about that being the responsibility of the FBI at some point.
And so if we're taking over that responsibility, potentially, is that included in the projected, in this 30,000 that you're talking about for annual maintenance, or is that something extra?
I think that money could certainly be used for that. In the past, it's been used for road maintenance, building maintenance out there. Like I said, I don't have any of the documents in front of me, but I do believe that the lead remediation was listed at some place in that FBI user agreement, and certainly it's something that continue to be negotiated should we continue that relationship.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question. I saw Ahmad light up, and I wasn't sure if you were going to add anything onto that. But
No, I don't.
okay, if not, so it sounds like this would dramatically increase the amount of activity at the shooting range from what it is now. And that potentially, if we're also seeking cost recovery to lease it out to other entities beyond the sheriff's office and the FBI, that we'd be looking at a similar situation to what we're hearing about with English Pit right now, which is that it's busy all the time. And then we'd also be looking at extending into the evening. So I believe that that will probably cause some concern for the folks living around the area of Camp Bonneville. And I'm curious what outreach has been done to communicate with those folks and to receive public input, as well as what sound and what kind of mitigation efforts may be being considered to help ease that impact on this area.
I can add a couple of things, and then anybody else feel free to jump in. So as I mentioned earlier, that one of our neighboring Clark Rifle Association, who has been there for a long time, and they're growing, and I think there's a 5-year waiting list period for people to become members. They have done a lot of good public outreach and also mitigation in terms of sound and other things that they have done. We're going to be getting their help, and so that we keep our cost minimum. There's some volunteers there willing to help us, so we're going to be doing that. And at the conclusion of this presentation, we're going to do a press release about announcing the move of the Sheriff's Department to that area. And also in terms of the master plan, we're going to have a lot more engagement, which will be really robust for master planning and other uses that's going to go on the site. So that's so far our plan, and if council would like us to do additional outreach, we're more than happy to do it.
Councilor Lentz, this is Greg Johnson. I'll add a couple things on to what Ahmad had talked about. Since 2012, when we renewed the lease with the FBI, we've only had one complaint about noise. And Commander Kasberg and myself have looked into this, and we even at range control, which is, as the crow flies, maybe half a mile from here, we cannot hear them when they're shooting. The one day that we did get a complaint was the FBI had brought out, probably 15 to 20 agents, and they were shooting MP5s, which that weapon system is extremely loud. We had really low cloud cover, and it was not that bad. As Ahmad said, Clark Rifles, they're our neighbor on our north side. We hear them all the time, and their range is louder than ours. They've been a really good partner to us. I've been up there to look at their range and showed some of their facilities, and we talked about lead abatement and sound mitigation and things like that. And as a matter of fact, Friday, one of the range officers from there is coming down to meet with me at 11 o'clock, and we're going to look at the expansion of the FBI range and get his opinion on that. But like I said, we've had one complaint in the last 8 years for noise.
Yeah, I'll just add that the atmospheric conditions have a lot to do with it. If there's low cloud cover, that sound waves are going to bounce off the clouds and travel. Other than that, they just spread out in like throwing a rock in a pond. And we're already in a dugout berm area surrounded by trees, surrounded by that whole valley on the outside of that. So, most of the time the sound isn't going to travel that far. You may hear some noise, and it's not so much that that was a really loud bang. It's just going to be that there's going to be muffled tones throughout the day when agencies are shooting out there.
When I think of where the English Pit is located versus Camp Bonneville, it seems to me that if there was going to be complaints about noise, it would have happened at the English Pit. And I mean, Camp Bonneville is so much more rural than where English Pit is. And I don't know, Councillor Lentz, if you know exactly where English Pit is. You probably do, but it seems to me that that Camp Bonneville is going to be a much better place for this to take place.
Well, and this is Bill Richardson with the prosecuting attorney's office. So when you're dealing with noise complaints, sometimes you're dealing with volume, sometimes you're dealing with frequency. With regards to frequency, Councilor Lentz, I believe that's what you're concerned about, because the increase in traffic to this site will not likely increase the actual volume of the firing range. It will just increase the frequency with which that volume is applied during any day or time period or nighttime period. Because I don't believe that we're contemplating changing the types of weapon systems that are going to be brought onto the range for target practice. So it will have the same volume that it has likely always had. It will just be at a higher frequency. However, if there was a groundswell of concern about noise complaints, I know that our code enforcement department has the ability to measure noise levels at the property line, and under state environmental protection standards, that's where you measure noise levels to determine if a use on a property is going to fall within the environmental protection guidelines. So it is possible that if there was a groundswell of concern about the noise levels of the range, we could definitely take noise level measurements at the property line during times of high frequency use to determine what those ambient noise levels are, and then take them at times when the range is not being used and compare those two noise levels to see if there is an actual concern that could be done. But for now, I believe that the facts are that the noise levels generated by the firing range as it is right now are not significant, not at the property line at least.
Greg, one question for you. If you were to guess, or if you might have the information, how far is if you have to measure the current FBI range to the nearest residence? I think it's probably more than half a mile. Is that correct? Or maybe something else, but I know it's pretty far compared to English Pit. So do you have an estimate? If not, we could probably provide that for council later on.
I'm counting the grids right now. 7, 8. So 10,000 feet. Oh no, that's not right. Looks like it's about a mile to the main gate and about pretty close to a mile to the south gate on both of them. If anyone can see my finger on the map right there, there's the FBI range. And that's the main gate. And here's the south gate down here. But that's the FBI range.
Thank you. Are there any further questions?
Madam Chair, if I would, and I agree with your comment about where the English Pit public shooting range as well as the sheriff range right now are in a poor location, especially with the redevelopment and infill that's going to be going on in that immediate area. One topic that really hasn't been discussed, and I think it's worthy of mentioning with those that are here providing the briefing, I think I would put it in the misperception range where, and no pun intended with the word range, but we have public shooting out on public lands during dry season that very rarely cause a fire danger. What I would like you to speak to is a well-managed and run range as to any additional or non-existent additional fire danger from the improvement of these existing ranges.
Well, I'll say that the ammunition that we fire and any specialty munitions that we use are relatively safe under any fire conditions. We don't have incendiary rounds. We don't use we have flashbangs, but we rarely use those on the range unless they're specifically being trained that day. And again, it may create an issue or a black area that's maybe 6 or 8 inches across, but we also have plans for that. We don't use gas grenades. We don't use flashbangs or anything along those lines without a fire extinguisher present. And we use them in the middle of that gravel range. So there's a significant distance between that and any brush that could create a fire danger. We don't have anything that sends sparks out like a firework. There isn't any munitions that we use that would do that. And again, it's 9mm handgun rounds, 45 caliber handgun rounds, 223 caliber rifle rounds, and occasionally a 308 caliber rifle round. And yeah, there may be a muzzle flash along with the report, and there is a potential for if a bullet strikes one of the metal pieces to either the shooting plates or the target stands, that it could create a spark. But again, it's in an area that's quite a distance from any dry brush or dry grass, and I don't see any scenario where if there was a fire that was started that we wouldn't be able to get to it and stomp it out or use a fire extinguisher or anything before it got too far.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just wanted people to understand that a well-established and clean range isn't a fire hazard unless you are sending ascendaries beyond the berm or something like that. That's not going to happen at an established and with range officers and range masters right there. So we just had a lot of emails about the increased fire danger, and it really doesn't exist. I mean, it's pretty rare in the world, and it's usually from a hunter or some other shooter that doesn't have a berm, it doesn't have a backstop, striking a rock somewhere out in dry brush. So that does not happen at ranges like these.
Thanks for bringing
Correct.
it
And
up.
even with there's multiple breaching doors out at Camp Bonneville where we can practice manual breaching of a doorway, shotgun breaching, and then even explosive breaching, which is a capability that we have and we've used often on very high risk warrants. Those charges that are placed on the door and detonated they provide some heat, but normally they're tamped with water, so the heat dissipates right away. And again, same things are taken into account. There's fire extinguishers around. We have the ability to use those only in gravel areas where there isn't a significant danger of catching something on fire.
Okay, thank you. Does that conclude this? I think we've covered it fairly thoroughly here in an hour and 10 minutes. So if there are no further questions, I'd like to move on to the next item. And I want to thank everybody who participated. Thank you, Casey, for taking time from your training there. And Greg, appreciate your input, and Ahmad and Galena, anybody, and Bill, all of you folks, thank you very much for your participation in this. I appreciate it. So we're going to move on. Thank you. We're going to move on to the next item under new business 2.2, mutual law enforcement agreement, senior wellness check program.
This is John Orchard, the Sheriff's Office. Leslie, did you want me to start?
Yes, you can go ahead.
All right, good morning, everyone. It's still morning. So I wasn't aware that it needed a staff report, because really what we're looking for on this mutual law enforcement agreement is the county manager's signature on it. It's a pretty straightforward program, our volunteer program with the county, checking on seniors, a phone check-in, and we're asking for the City of Vancouver's help with their volunteer program. So Leslie has reviewed it and signed it. All the city officials have signed it and reviewed it. I think Kathleen has a copy of it. I'm not sure if she has reviewed it or not. It's very straightforward, but it does require your permission for her signature on it. So that's why it's on the agenda today.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the council on this? And if not, I would entertain a motion to allow the county manager to sign this agreement.
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve, to give authority to Kathleen Otto to sign this agreement for the Clark County's Sheriff's Office and the Vancouver Police Department to participate in senior wellness check services. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you very much for your patience, John. Seems like you've been on a while, so thank you very much. We'll move on to our next item, councilor reports. Next, work session requests. We have the jail population study. Lindsay or Rick, or who's going to present it?
Well, good afternoon or good morning, Chair. I'll just go ahead and start real quick. We've submitted the 9-step request for a work session. Just brief background: early in March, the criminal justice system met to address COVID-19 issues and potential risk mitigation through social distancing, and reduce the jail population. Since then, the jail population has continued to grow, and we're at a point now where we need to discuss with the board resources, more jail bed space or resources, as the criminal justice system is reluctant to do any more releases due to the serious nature of the crimes the inmates who are incarcerated are alleged to commit. The sheriff not being able to release people is coming to the board and looking for a work session to discuss options, resources, and next steps to manage the jail population.
Okay, I think it's self-explanatory. I think we need the work session on this. Does anybody object to a work session on this issue? Hearing and seeing none, we'll get that on the schedule ASAP.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Lindsay, policy report.
Good morning. I just have a couple of quick things for you. One, just an update on the business grants, the COVID-19 business grants that we're doing with CRADC and the Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce. Those agreements have been finalized in the last 24 hours, and we're working on getting Kathleen's signature and then getting the final coding and the money out to the entities. I definitely thank them. They've been good partners with us. And they are going to work together so that they have hopefully a single application, so businesses don't have to worry about applying to one or the other or which one's which. So they have a single application, a single place to go, and then the two of them will work on the back end to coordinate that. So they're excited to move forward, and I'm excited that we're going to be able to get these dollars out into the community soon. So the other question I had for you, of course, we normally in a typical year have the mental health sales tax advisory board. That board, we suspended meetings this year just because of COVID, and we're not doing additional grants for funding beginning January 2021 because of COVID. And so the staff on there, typically we've wanted to start doing an annual report, and they're wanting to move that at least for this year to be a biannual report. But I wanted to check in with you and make sure that that was okay for you to do a biannual report instead of an annual report just for this first year because of COVID and suspending the meetings. So any concerns with that?
Any objections of the council to a biannual report this year?
Perfect. I'll let the staff know. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you so much. Okay, we are going to go into an executive session for one potential litigation for 20 minutes, and there will be no action. So we are adjourned from council time, and I believe we have to sign in to an executive session. So see you on the other side. We're adjourned.